Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we've got a truly amazing and heartwarming story for you. A story about love, family, and an unexpected decision that changed so many lives. It's about a single officer who decided to adopt 6 sisters in a moment that shocked his community. And how, nearly 2 decades later, those girls returned with a surprise that no one expected. So, if you're ready to feel inspired, and maybe even shed a few tears, let's get into the story of Officer John Coleman and the 6 young sisters he would go on to call his daughters. Our story starts almost 20 years ago, in a small town where Officer John Coleman lived and worked. John was in his early 40s, and he was the kind of person everyone knew and respected. He was dedicated to his community, passionate about his job, and always willing to go the extra mile to help others. Though he had been a police officer for years, he was known to spend his free time volunteering with local youth programs, coaching sports, and mentoring teens who needed guidance. He loved kids and had always imagined that one day he might have children of his own. But life hadn't worked out that way, at least not yet. One day, John was called out to handle what was supposed to be a routine welfare check. When he arrived, he found a deeply troubling situation involving 6 young girls, all sisters, whose lives had taken a tragic turn. Their mother had recently passed away, and their father was no longer in the picture. Without any close relatives who could step in to care for them, the sisters were facing the very real possibility of being separated and placed into foster care. As he stood there looking at these 6 young girls, John felt something in his heart shift. He saw their fear, their confusion, and the worry in their eyes. Even though he barely knew them, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had to do something to help. The thought of these sisters being split up, each of them losing the only family they had left, broke his heart. That night, John couldn't sleep. The faces of those 6 girls stayed with him, and he found himself thinking about his own childhood. He knew how much siblings could mean to each other, especially during times of loss and hardship. That's when an idea began to take root in his mind, an idea that many might consider impossible or even crazy. He started to wonder, what if he could give them the home they so desperately needed? Over the next few days, John couldn't shake the thought. He wrestled with it, going over all the reasons why adopting 6 children, especially as a single man, would be difficult, maybe even impossible. His friends and family thought he was crazy. Some told him outright that he shouldn't do it, that it would be too hard, too expensive, too much for one person to handle. But deep down, John knew that he was the kind of person who couldn't just walk away. He had always believed in going above and beyond, especially when it came to helping those who needed it most. So, after giving it a lot of thought, John made the decision. He started the long and difficult process of applying to become the legal guardian for all 6 sisters. This was no small feat. Not only did he have to prove that he was financially capable of caring for 6 children, but he also had to demonstrate that he had the emotional and mental stability to handle such a huge responsibility. As you can imagine, it wasn't easy. But through every hurdle, John's commitment never wavered. He knew what he was doing was right, and he believed with all his heart that these girls deserved to stay together. Finally, after months of paperwork, interviews and home inspections, John's application was approved. He was granted custody of all 6 sisters, and they officially became a family. It was a joyous moment, but also one filled with uncertainty. The girls were scared and unsure, having experienced so much change and loss in such a short amount of time. But John was ready. He was determined to be the father they needed, no matter what it took. The early days of their new family life were challenging. John was used to his life as a bachelor, where he could come and go as he pleased. But now he was responsible for 6 young children, each of whom had their own unique personalities, needs, and dreams. He had to learn how to cook for a large family, help with homework, keep up with school schedules, and even do hair, something he definitely had no experience with. The girls had their own adjustments to make too. They had just lost their mother, and they were suddenly living with a man they barely knew. They had to navigate their grief, adjust to new routines, and learn to trust someone new. But John never gave up. He showed up for them every single day, providing the stability and love they needed. He encouraged them to talk about their feelings, assured them that they were safe, and made it clear that, no matter what, he would always be there for them. As time went on, the girls and John became inseparable. They developed an incredible bond, each one of them finding a sense of family they hadn't felt in a long time. John became their hero, their protector, and their guiding light. He attended every school event, every recital, every game, cheering them on and supporting them with all his heart. He wasn't just their adoptive father, he was their biggest fan and their role model. John made sure each of his daughters knew how special they were. He supported their dreams, encouraged their strengths, and helped them through their struggles. And as they grew, they thrived. Each of them found her own path, blossoming into a confident young woman, but they always stayed close, bound together by the love and support John had shown them. Then, 19 years later, something truly remarkable happened. The sisters, now all adults with lives of their own, decided they wanted to do something incredibly special for the man who had given them everything. They had been talking about it for years, but now they felt the time was finally right. They wanted to show John just how much he had meant to them and how deeply they appreciated everything he had done. The sisters organized a surprise celebration in John's honor. They invited family, friends, and members of the community who had been part of their journey, people who had watched John's story unfold and had been inspired by his commitment and love. The day was filled with joy, laughter, and tears as people shared their memories and stories about the incredible journey John and the girls had been on. One by one, each sister took the stage, sharing her own story about how John had impacted her life. They spoke about the values he had instilled in them, the lessons he had taught them, and the sacrifices he had made for them. Each of them described how John's love had shaped them into the people they were today. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as they shared their heartfelt stories, and John himself was moved beyond words. Then came the big reveal. The sisters had saved up for years to give John something they knew he had always dreamed of but had never been able to afford. They presented him with a fully funded vacation to a destination he had long wanted to visit but had put off for the sake of raising them. The moment was filled with emotion as John realized just how much his daughters had sacrificed to give him this gift. John was overwhelmed, not only by the gift itself, but by the love and gratitude his daughters showed him. He looked around the room at the 6 young women he had raised, each of them now strong, kind, and successful in their own ways. And he realized that every challenge, every sleepless night, every sacrifice had been worth it. John's story didn't end there. After the celebration, word of his remarkable family spread, and soon news outlets began to cover the story. People all over the country were moved by the story of a single officer who had taken in 6 sisters, giving them a home and a family when they needed it most. His story inspired others to think about the power of love and what it really means to be a family. Looking back, John says he wouldn't have changed a thing. The girls had brought him more joy, purpose, and love than he ever could have imagined. And for the sisters, John was more than just a father. He was the man who had shown them that family isn't defined by blood, but by love, commitment, and the willingness to stand by each other no matter what. Thank you all for tuning in today. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories like this one. Remember, family is what you make it, and love can truly change lives. Until next time, take care and cherish those you love.